The pro-life movement is a bunch of losers? No way. Hey everyone, it's Kristan Hawkins with Explicitly Pro-Life. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts on. Today I want to talk about us being losers a little bit. This is going to be a fun one. But it's going to be difficult, and it's going to kind of take some honesty and some realism, because today I want to talk about where the pro-life movement has failed. I mean, we've been around for 40 plus years, so we can't always be winners, and we're going to make mistakes along the way, especially starting this nascent young pro-life movement to where we are, this sophisticated pro-life movement today. We've made some mistakes along the way, so I want to go over some of those mistakes. I don't want to call out specific things or specific people. I want to keep this at a high level, but I do want to talk about some overarching themes, things that happen over and over and over again that I think we need to learn from, and quite frankly, I think we need to improve. So I'm probably going to offend some of you. I apologize. You can email me anytime at Kristan@studentsforlife.org if you really want to complain, or you can put your comments down below on YouTube, or you can find me on Instagram, Kristan Mercer Hawkins, or even on Facebook, Kristan Mercer Hawkins, and let me know how you really feel. I don't want to silence anybody, but sorry in advance if I piss you off. Okay. So where the pro-life movement has failed. One of the first things I think that we tend to do is, while we know the mission doesn't change, what we're trying to do in the pro-life movement, make abortion illegal and unthinkable, I think sometimes we fail to forget that strategies and tactics do change. And guess what? Newsflash, that's okay. Our organizations are not, and should not be built upon our strategies. And we need to be able to be flexible, because as culture changes, as the legislation's introduced, as things in the media happen, we need to be able to kind of meet people where they are, and bring them into our movement, bring them into our mission of abolishing abortion. This is something that is on my heart a lot, because I know in the history of Students for Life, we have tried a lot of different strategies and a lot of different tactics, and some have always worked. Some we worked for a little bit and then we had to get rid of. But it wasn't something that I was married to. If I have to change a strategy, if I have to change a tactic at Students for Life, it doesn't mean I'm changing my mission. It doesn't mean we're changing our organization. It just means it's a very practical acknowledgement of, well, we measured success here and we measured not a lot of success here. Something has to change. We have to challenge ourselves to do better. We need more people to turn out, or more students to be active, or more leaders to stand up. I had an argument one time with a pro-life leader. This person believes themselves to be a pro-life leader. I think you could maybe contest it, because I think, you're only a leader if people actually follow you, not just because you say you are, but that's a whole different, podcast about what is leadership. But what was interesting was we were having this discussion about a tactic, a strategy. And, I was saying, have you ever considered this? I know you're frustrated that college students don't want to do this thing anymore. And maybe they did do this thing 20 years ago, but, maybe college students are different today than they were 20 years ago. It's a different generation. And just because, the tactic might be different, or the way you approach college students to get them involved in your part of the pro-life mission, the pro-life niche, doesn't mean that all pro-life students are pansies, or the whole world's going to hell. It just means something might have changed with the generation. And at this point, during this conversation, I was trying to be nice and tactful. Maybe I wasn't as good as I should have been, but I was really trying. Apparently, I've been told I'm a really bad actress, so you can read on my face what I'm thinking. That's why the team doesn't let me do one-on-one apologetics often, because apparently you can see on my face everything I'm thinking. But there was this point in the meeting where the pro-life leader stood up and, said, well, I'm a prophet of God. I was called by God into this movement, and prophets were stoned in their days, regardless of whether or not anyone listened to them. So it doesn't matter if you think I'm effective or anyone thinks I'm effective. I'm doing what God calls me to do. kind of stopped conversation there because there really wasn't much to go on. I really believe that we were called to be, wise, and to use all the gifts that God has given us to be successful. And God doesn't call us to be successful. He does call us to be faithful. And it's up to him as a Christian. I believe it's up to him and the Holy Spirit to tell us, and direct us and to help us to be successful in our mission. But I do think we're supposed to use the brains God freaking gave us to say, like, hey, this strategy isn't working anymore. Maybe I should try something different. I don't know. But it's hard when someone labels themselves a prophet of God. It gets a little difficult trying to convince them that maybe something should change. But I think that's one of the things that we have really failed at, of believing that if we change our strategy or we change our tactic, we're somehow changing our mission or abandoning our mission or abandoning our organization. And that's not the case. I think you have to be willing as a leader, as someone in the pro-life movement, to embrace change. And change is hard. I know change is hard, but it's something we have to be willing to do. You have to be willing to pivot at a moment's notice. And that's just the reality. That's just how things are. Another place I think we have failed at times is not passing on the baton of leadership. I mean, I really should do a podcast on leadership. This is something I studied a lot after I started Students for Life, because I was 21 when I started Students for Life. And, I had led a Students for Life group in my high school. I led a pro-life group in my college. And, I had done several things. And quite frankly, I was always a type A bossy person. I mean, that's never changed. But, being a bossy person doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be a good boss. It doesn't mean people are going to listen to you just because you want to tell them what they should do. So I spent a lot of time studying what does it mean to be a leader. And this is a lot of the stuff we actually have passed on, and we train our young leaders, our fellows, our high school and college fellows every year on this. But I think this is something we've seen it over and over again in the pro-life movement. We've seen it over and over again in the conservative movement, of not passing on the baton of leadership, of founders having founder syndrome and saying, I'm the only one who can do this. No one can do this except for me. And then what happens when that founder dies? The organization dies. There is an organization right now in the pro-life movement that one time was this huge organization, multi-million dollars, had numerous staff, had a building, and it's now down to 3 people. And the founder is still there. This person's health is declining, and the organization sadly won't exist in a few short years. We need to be able to be constantly looking and saying, where can I find a better version of me? Where can I find someone I can train up? Because guess what? They're there. The pro-life generation is young and eager. In fact, I had a student on an evaluation of our national conference last year, which, by the way, is turned into the National Pro-Life Summit. You should definitely register January 25th, 2020. It's going to be the world's largest pro-life conference, prolifesummit.org. Anyway, last year at the Students for Life conference, formerly known as Students for Life Conference, a student actually posted on the evaluation, when does your term as president end, and how can I run for your job? Which is great, which is very cute. No, we do not have elections for Kristan's job every year, because I'm employed by a board of directors and I am a full-time professional. But it was a really good reminder that there's a whole generation of people who are young and eager and who are ready to take the charge and ready to take lead. And the question is, are you mentoring them? Is your Right to Life group, is your county, Right to Life group or pro-life organization, or is your pregnancy center, are you bringing in new blood and challenging yourself? Because, be honest with you, sometimes bringing in people who are brand new are going to be challenged. You're going to ask, why did you do this? It's just like your children, right? Because millennials, especially Generation Z, need to understand the why behind something when you're assigning them a task. Read any management book on Generation Z and why about that. But this is something you have to do. At Students for Life, we have the Kristan gets hit by a bus plan. And for many years, I was terrified that if I would die, if I would get hit by a bus, Students for Life wouldn't exist. That we couldn't go on, we couldn't carry on. And we made, we had markers of what can be done. Can Kristan go on vacation for a day, for a week, and will the organization survive? And today, yes, I can proudly say, after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, after a lot of hiring and firing and rehiring, we've found that team that if tomorrow I die, tomorrow if the board of directors gets sick of my loud mouth and wants to get rid of me, our organization, Students for Life, will survive and it will continue to grow. But are we doing that? Are we constantly trying to find young people, find new leaders within our organizations? Because as much as we hate to admit to ourselves, like, we're not always the smartest people in the room, and we can be replaced within our organization. There are others. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. Because if you bring somebody into your pregnancy center, you bring somebody into your Right to Life group, they're going to have different ideas and different ways of going about things, and they're going to make mistakes. That's why mentorship is so important. Help them see through kind of the pitfalls that you fell into as a leader. You can be the one to be right with them the whole step of the way and planning things out. Another place I think our pro-life movement has failed is putting ego above unity. Putting organization above movement. This is something that frustrates me so much at Students for Life, and with what we've done with Students for Life is, sometimes I make decisions at Students for Life that, sometimes I put organization above movement, and I really try not to do that, because it's difficult. It is difficult because I'm charged with growing our organization, making sure we meet our budget, making sure we meet our goals to help us get to our mission. But at the end of the day, I have to remember it's not about the organization. Supporters don't give to Students for Life because they're 100% loyal to the organization. It's all about the organization. Supporters give because they're loyal to the mission of the movement to abolish abortion. And they feel like Students for Life is a vehicle, is a good vehicle, good investment to help us get closer to that mission. And I think that's so difficult and I have a hard time personally when I see pro-life leaders, even friends of mine, who make decisions that I believe aren't the best for the movement, but are in their minds the best for their organization. Because we have to be careful of balancing our decisions and knowing that we need to make decisions that are good for the movement, for the whole movement. And sometimes making decisions that are good for the movement, they go against kind of common sense for how to grow an organization. For an example, this year, the Students for Life America Conference doesn't exist. Despite being the only organization that puts on an annual conference in Washington, D.C., it's the largest pro-life conference in the world. We do it every year, the Saturday, the day after the March for Life. This year, we've decided to do something different. 2020 is a historic year. So we're giving up the name Students for Life, which is like the opposite thing you're told to do in marketing and branding. And we're calling it the National Pro-Life Summit. And we're going to share the stage with 3 other pro-life organizations: Live Action, Heritage Foundation, Alliance Defending Freedom. These 4 organizations are getting equal stage time. Their logos are going to be shared the same. Everyone's sharing the same contact list. Unfortunately, I'm fundraising most of the money for it to hopefully make up the difference because, conferences cost a lot more than what attendees ever pay. So I've got more of the fun to have to fundraise the money for the cost, but everyone else is going to share in the glory. And it's hugely important that we do this because 2020 is such a pivotal year. Like, this is the time. Momentum is on our side. And that's why we've done this year is to unite pro-life organizations, to unite the pro-life movement. But it was a decision that, quite frankly, was putting movement above organization. And so I've seen this over and over again where this happens, of putting organization over movement, or putting ego above all else. I talked about this in a recent podcast episode about the history of the pro-life movement, where there was fighting between the Human Life Bill and the Human Life Amendment in the 1980s, and both had good intentions to end abortion, but then this fighting began, and the question is, who is more pro-life? And this is something that still happens today, right? You've got that crazy group of people, the abolish abortion people, who, they put like all these memes with my face and put these words like coming out of my mouth are totally crazy. But it's, if you don't support their type of legislation, then you're not pro-life enough. And they don't even call themselves pro-life because pro-lifers are a bunch of sellouts or something like that. Good intentioned people who want to abolish abortion, who understand the reality of what happens every single day behind the Planned Parenthood doors, behind the abortion facility doors, who then have declared war against everyone else who's trying to fight the pro-life movement. It doesn't make sense. Stop doing it. Another thing that we've done where we failed this kind of goes right into it. We forget sometimes that our competitor is Planned Parenthood. Our competitor is the abortion lobby. Our competitor is the culture of death. It is not the pregnancy center down the road. Our competitor is not the other county right to life group. It is not the other pro-life organization. We should be in the business of working together, of finding ideas of if a pro-life group has research or a strategy that's working, adopting that strategy, using it, not reinventing the wheel, not spending precious and scarce resources and time and money to reinvent the wheel when someone else has done it or might do it better. I'm not saying Students for Life is perfect, and the reason I can bring this list up to you is because honestly, I've made these mistakes at some point, in leading Students for Life 13 years. But, one of the things that we try to do is try to figure out, okay, who's doing something good and how can we use it? For example, last fall, Students for Life, we had a Stop the Violence tour. It was one of the most successful tours on college campuses because let's be real, no one's for violence. And what abortion really is, at the end of the day, is violence. And so it's actually really easy to convert mushy middle and pro-abortion students when you talk about abortion in terms of violence. But what we realized is Live Action had a really great video with our friend Dr. Levantino, a former abortionist, describing an abortion. It wasn't gory. It was something you could take on campuses. So we got a Jumbotron. We asked Live Action for their permission. And when we were doing our display, we were showing Live Action's video. When we couldn't afford the Jumbotron, we had it on a laptop. We were able to use something that another organization spent time and money developing and bring it in. And it didn't take away with what we were doing. Students for Life was still able to fundraise and promote what we were doing on campuses. It only added value. And so I think this is so important of finding ways that we can work together. We can share strategies. In 2011, Alliance Defending Freedom, our group of attorneys we work with, they are like the preeminent pro-life, pro-freedom attorneys in the United States. They do all of our college legal cases. ADF did all of this research on Planned Parenthood's brand and how to talk about Planned Parenthood in a way that made sense and to combat what Americans hear over and over and over again from Planned Parenthood. We took that research and we developed a whole program, our Planned Parenthood project, our tour that we take on college campuses. And today that still converts 50% of pro-Planned Parenthood students to being anti-Planned Parenthood students. We take that research, we've implemented, we distilled it down in a way that makes sense for college students, and it's working. That $250,000 or whatever ADF spent on that research was money well worth it just in how we were able to use the research at Students for Life. So don't forget that, these other organizations, the other pregnancy center, they're not your competitor. Who we're really competing against is Planned Parenthood and the abortion lobby. And I know it's funny for me to say this because I am like the most competitive person you will ever meet. In fact, I had a supporter gift me these mentoring sessions. Leadership mentoring sessions recently, and I've been going through this. The first part was kind of like a personality assessment. It's different than Myers-Briggs, but it's basically how do you thrive and where should you be, and a lot of I think it was written for a lot of mid-level executives who are kind of facing a midlife crisis. So it's where are you really gifted? And it's really funny because we were doing it, and my advisor and my mentor through the program is so polite and so nice, but he was like, wow, you're just so special. I've never met and been able to have a chance to coach somebody who has such high giftings and such rare things. And it was a great way of saying I'm crazy because the number one thing I thrive on as a human being that I need, that I have to have is competition. So I will make anything a competition. And I will compete with other pro-life organizations in my mind. Do we get a good graphic on Facebook or a good video? And is ours the best? And things like that. But at the end of the day, these are arbitrary metrics. I know what my real competition is, and that is the culture of death, and that's Planned Parenthood. And you just have to challenge yourself to keep that in your mind. Another mistake, another place I think we've failed in the pro-life movement sometimes is, we've really tied ourselves with the GOP, the Republican Party. And I think that can hurt us. That can hurt our recruitment. It can hurt the number of people that join our movement. I think it's strategic, and we've had to partner with the Republican Party because if you haven't noticed, there's not another game in town to actually pass pro-life laws. And I am so proud that the Republican Party is the pro-life party, that we have a staunchly pro-life platform. And I've spoken openly about how I am a Republican. I don't agree with all Republicans, but I am a proud Republican. But I think we have to be very careful because this is not a political issue. This is not a partisan issue. We are a human rights movement, and we should be able to call out Republicans when they fail us, when they have empty promises, and we should be able to call out Democrats when they are the extremist crazies that they're being right now. But at the end of the day, what we want and what we need in the pro-life movement are both political parties, Democrats and Republicans, vying for our votes. We need that. And I think we have to be careful about tying ourselves too closely to one political party. And I get, like, I was in DC for a long time. I thankfully don't live in DC anymore. I miss it. I'm there all the time, but I don't actually live in DC anymore. People don't even know that. And I get why you have to, right? You have to seek favor with the party that's going to help you to pass laws to save lives. And passing laws saves lives. And part of ending abortion is making it illegal. And so the political is very important. But I do think we need to do a better job of not tying ourselves too closely to one political party ever. I've heard sometimes, and this is a weird one to kind of say maybe, but, a lot of people are very proud that we're so grassrootsy, that we're so gritty. And we take pride in how grassrootsy we are. And that's awesome. We take pride in how cheap and thrifty and how much we've done with so little amount of money. That's awesome. One of our core values as Students for Life is gritty. If you are not gritty, if you can't figure out a way to make it happen no matter what your budget, then you're not going to work for us very long, because we are gritty, right? We are thinking outside the box. But I think sometimes we're too proud of this to a fault, where we don't do the actual research that needs to be done before we launch a project, of actually spending real money, doing market testing on research, not just saying, oh, well, our leader had a conversation with her friend about this and it seemed to really work. So yeah, let's launch a national project on that. Maybe you want to test it. I've offered over and over again to pro-life groups, before you unveil something, come to us and we'll do a free, we'll get the students you want from whatever background you want on a call. You could do a focus group, because just test it out. Just make sure it works before you spend all that time and that money. I think sometimes, because we want to be so grassroots, we don't want to pay what we need to pay to get to hire the lobbyists we need to hire or do what we need to do. And you've realized at Planned Parenthood, it is no expense spared in promoting abortion. We need to be the same way. We can be proud to be gritty. We can be proud to be good stewards of the donations that we're given, because every single person who donates to the pro-life movement is making a sacrifice. I mean, our organization runs on, under $500 donations. I mean, hands down. So we have to be extremely thrifty with everything that is gifted to us. But we also have to be smart and know sometimes you're going to have to spend money, and we're going to have to do the research and the long view things. I think somewhere where we failed is we've kind of written off Hollywood and pop culture. And we understand people in Hollywood are flawed human beings, and my goodness, we can talk about that all day long. And sometimes you don't really want to put, you don't want to idealize a Hollywood star, because they might be with us on this issue, but then the next day really not be with us, or they might change their mind. But it seems to work out pretty great for Planned Parenthood when they've got Miley Cyrus and what's that one, that Grande Arena? I'm not even that cool. Arena Grande, doing whole concerts benefiting them. It helps them. It really does, because they do events, and let's face it, our generation, our country turns out and listens to people in Hollywood. I think we've done a disservice to ourselves by kind of casting those types out and saying we're not even going to engage with them. They're never going to be with us. Maybe we should do more. Maybe we should have done more to get those famous people, those Hollywood types, in line with us and excited to be part of our movement, and brought them in. One other place I think we have failed or haven't done a very good job of is learning from other successful movements. The gay rights movement, the gay marriage movement changed this country in what was like a blink of an eye. What were their strategies? How can we replicate their strategies? If you've ever, you can read a book called After the Ball. It was written in the late 80s, early 90s about it was written about how the gay rights movement could basically make homosexuality, gay marriage a mainstream thing. And I swear those activists, the LGBT activists, took it, ran right with it. What did they do? Well, they went to the schools first. The first thing they did is they went to the schools. They talked to young kids in kindergarten, kids like me. They went to Hollywood. Remember Will and Grace? They normalized the behavior of homosexuals to say, look, this isn't rare. This is something that, a lot of people are homosexuals, and look, they're just like us. And then, it was a slow build. They didn't go straight to politics. Politics was like the last thing. In 2004, there were all these state ballots, referendums on gay marriage, and the anti-gay marriage folks won. It was like resounding. But something happened from 2004 until 2015 to 2019, where we are today. What did those other successful social movements do? What did it look like? I was reading a book called Blueprint for Revolution. I love this book. It's kind of like an updated Rules to Radical Solinsky book. It was written by a student leader in Serbia who helped fight against Slobodan Milosevic, the dictator there, the murderous dictator there. And, these are young students fighting this brutal, militaristic, repressive regime. And he was talking about what they did. How did they encourage freedom? How did they build up people? And there's so many different lessons I think we can learn from all these other movements across the world and across history. I mean, one of my favorite lessons from Blueprint for Revolution, and something I'm really emphasizing in Students for Life, and hopefully throughout the rest of the pro-life movement, is to demystify the unknown that the left uses, the abortion left uses the scare tactic of America without Roe to be this big scary thing. Like, you've never lived in a country without Roe. You've never lived in a country without legal abortion. It's going to be terrible. And we have just been silent on this. And the question is, what is our vision as pro-lifers? What do we think America without Roe will be like? We need to paint that vision. We need to cast that vision. By the way, that's the theme of our 2020 National Summit. So make sure you register at ProLifeSummit.org, January 25th. We need to be able to cast that vision so it's not scary, so people understand, yes, the pro-life movement, we're advocating to make abortion legal, but we're also advocating to make it unthinkable and to make sure every single woman, no matter where she is, knows she never has to make a false choice between the life of her child and her education or her career, and that we'll stand with her every single step of the way. And that, by the way, we have the resources to do that. We have to demystify the unknown. We have to be able to learn from other, successful social movements. Something we haven't done so well that I think we can do better is tread that faith line better. Look, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I understand I'm wearing a cross today. Majority of my generation is not religious, and it's getting worse. America is increasingly becoming like Europe, a very secularized society, that this is going to have ramifications all across our nation, all across our world, to be honest with you. But if we want to have a successful movement, I think we need to be able to make sure people know that you don't have to be religious to be one of us, to be part of us, that you can be secular, you can be questioning, you can be agnostic, you can be atheist and still be pro-life. And I think we need to do a better job of talking about that. And I'm not saying, now, by the way, this is when I'm probably pissing off most people, I'm not saying to hide our faith. I'm not saying that, because obviously, hello, I'm wearing a cross today. I am proud to say that I'm a Christian, and I will talk about my faith when asked. But I'm very careful. If I'm on a college campus and I'm having discussion with somebody about abortion, I'm not going to bring up faith unless they do. Because guess what? I can defend my views. I can show them that abortion is the greatest human rights atrocity that has ever happened, and I don't have to talk about God. because I don't know where they stand. And that's a whole different issue. Now, by the way, I would maintain if we bring more people into the pro-life movement, I think it actually will bring them closer to God, because guess what? When you join the pro-life movement, you actually get to meet other Christians. You're surrounded by other faith believers. And I think that's how you evangelize. It's belong, believe, behave. Once, you start hanging out, if you're an agnostic or kind of, you're questioning, is there a God? And you start hanging out with Christians, and you actually like those Christians and you like what they stand for, fighting abortion, you become friends with them. Guess what? You might be willing to actually listen to what they have to say and consider their viewpoints. If you think all Christians are crazy and pro-lifers are crazy, you may never listen to us ever. And I think that's why we're so effective on college campuses, is because that's kind of our motto, and that's kind of our model for our missionaries, for our students who are out there evangelizing the pro-life movement. Belong, believe, behave, of bring people into your cause, bring them to your events, bring them to your group meetings, no matter where they may stand on the issue. Have them come, have them bring bring a different viewpoint, and have a second look at the movement, and get to know them as a person and become friends with them. And then, guess what? They might just start listening to what you have to say about abortion. Once they start belonging, they might start believing believing the same way you believe, and then they'll finally behave. So I think we need to be careful about treading this faith line better. I think it's frustrating when we go to media events and we're out in front of the Supreme Court. I know what the photographers want. They want a picture of a white old guy holding a crucifix, holding a rosary, and they want to juxtapose that with a young, hip, cool-looking girl holding a pro-abortion sign. So I'm always very careful when we're out there. When media is involved, I'm like, don't be religious, don't be weird, don't give the media anything they want that the narrative they're trying to push, because we're changing the narrative here. We're showing America that the pro-life generation is right here, that we are the majority of Americans, and guess what? We look just like them, and we are just like them. Yeah, I know I probably made people mad. Sorry about that. I think the last kind of thing I'd say that we've failed at, or we can do better at the pro-life movement, is stop having bad apologetics. Now, once again, I realize when I say this, I've probably, I have done this in the past. So I can say this, I've done all of these things poorly. So this is also a reflection on myself. I think we need to be careful about how we're going to talk about abortion, and how we bring up abortion when other tragedies happen. This is something that it's debated, when we're commemorating and honoring and memorializing those who died in September 11th attacks every year. Do we compare it to abortion and say, well, September 9/11 happens every single day and America thanks to abortion? While it's true, those the same number of people who died in September 11th die every single day of abortion. While it's absolutely true and there's nothing to debate there, it probably comes across as a little insensitive to those who've lost somebody who died in the September 11th terrorist attacks, because many of those people don't believe that preborn child is a human being, that preborn child has rights, and so it comes across insensitive. Same deal when you compare, mass shootings to abortion. I think we need to be careful about that. Sometimes I'll say it, but I'm kind of careful. I try to be careful on how I compare, because you never want to make anyone feel that you're making light of the of another tragedy, right? I think you need to be careful we need to be careful. Stop saying stupid things like, well, if you didn't want to get pregnant, you should have kept your legs closed. Don't ever say that. I think we need to be really careful about saying things like that. I think that just only furthers the abortion lobby's argument. And I think it furthers their narrative about who we are. And so I think we just have to be careful about how we talk about abortion, how we compare abortion to other tragedies. And I think we need to be careful about using talking points that make us sound like white, old Christian fundamentalists. I think we need to be careful about that. We Students for Life work with a group called Equal Rights Institute. They're another pro-life organization that does great work. Josh Brahm is a founder. Rachel, one of our former student leaders, works over there. And Equal Rights Institute, they do webinars with us, and we train our students. And they've done a lot of work of having those conversations on campuses and seeing what works and what converts and what turns people off. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about apologetics, we're talking about conversions and how many conversions can we get. And so, I'm always looking at what's the most effective argument. Even if I really like an argument and I think it works for me, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everybody else. And I think that's something that we have to keep in mind. I encourage you to look up the TED Talk by Jonathan Haidt on moral foundations theory. He has a whole book called The Righteous Mind. It's up here on my bookshelf here, but it's hard to get through. He's an academic. He's a liberal professor, I think NYU or Columbia, but he has this whole kind of moral foundations, and he talks about how political liberals and political conservatives truly just think differently. They just think differently about things, and when they're making their minds up about decisions, they weight different things, and we need to be careful, because just because we think something works for us, like a tactic or an argument worked in converting us, don't assume it's going to work for everybody else. And if you're a political conservative, you can pretty much guarantee that's not going to work for a political liberal. And I understand this argument or this tactic might have really worked to convert you, but you cannot assume it's going to work for everybody else. This is naturally at Students for Life, when we're talking about what works best and how we convert, I pretty much assume if I really like something, me as the conservative white woman, it's probably not going to work on an African-American liberal student. And so I have to think about things differently. And it's not always a comfortable conversation, because I think everyone should just think how I think and rationalize how I rationalize, and then the world will be a better place. But that's not how it is. And so I think we have to be careful about how we talk to others about abortion, because it's about being effective and about how we get the most conversions. So thanks for tuning in this week to Explicitly Pro-Life. I hope to hear your suggestions on what you guys want me to discuss and talk about on future shows. Make sure you leave comments in the YouTube page or comments on my Instagram page at Kristan Mercer Hawkins, or you can find me on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe, and make sure you spread the word and tell other people to sign up for Explicitly Pro-Life, damn it. Thanks.